Hello guys, so I welcome you to the introductory course on C++. Okay, in this course we are going to learn a lot of things. So let's just quickly get into the course outline. Okay, so the structure of the course is going to be something like this. Okay, so first of all, there will be 9 sections in this course. Okay, and each section will have a good amount of information on a particular topic. Okay, so in the first section, okay, or in the first part of the course particularly, we are going to talk about the first C++ program. Okay, so yeah, it would be hello world program only. Okay, yeah, so we are going to talk about the hello world program, which will uh, give an idea about how a C++ program actually looks like. Okay, it will tell us about the body of a C++ program. Okay, body of a C++ program. So we'll get to know about what is the structure of a program written in C++. Then we are going to look at how we take input and output in C++. Okay, for input we use something called cin, and for output we use cout. Okay, it is an instance of outstream, and it is an instance of instream. Okay, the same thing. Then we'll talk about data types and comments. Okay, uh, along with data types and comments, we are going to also look at what are uh, you know constants and variables. Okay, within this section only, we are going to also look at what are constants. Okay, constants, and what are variables. Okay, we are going to look at the difference between these two. Then we are going to talk about data types. So data type is nothing but the data that we are going to work with. We know a lot of things, right? Let's say in real world we deal with data in the form of integers, in the form of decimal values, right? In the form of strings. Let's say the name, right? Let's say my name only. Yeah. So yeah, so we deal with a different types of data. So we'll talk about it in this section, and then we'll talk about comments as well. So what are comments? Comment is something, there are two types of comments particularly, not actually type, but yeah, they're called line comment. Okay, single line comment and block comment. Okay, so let's check a line comment only. Okay, or block comment. Okay, comments are basically used to keep notes or something. This the part which is under the comment is not executed during the execution of the program. So yeah, we'll talk about it in this section. Then we'll move forward to operators in C++ and what are the different types of operators. Okay, we'll talk about arithmetic operators, we'll talk about logical operators, we'll talk about relational operators. Okay, there are a number of operators that we are going to talk about. Okay, and then we'll talk about the binary representation of a number. Okay, there are two types of representation. First one is the 32-bit representation. Okay, and another one is the 64-bit representation. So 64-bit representation is basically for large numbers, and 32-bit representation also contain large number, but they are comparatively smaller than 64-bit numbers. Okay, so yeah, we are going to talk about the binary representation of the numbers. And then finally I've excluded this bitwise operators because the learners find difficulty in understanding what are the bitwise operators, because they are certainly different from the common operators that we use in C++. So yeah, this is the purpose, so that you will get to know how the bitwise operators work. Okay, so I've kept them like excluded. Okay, I've excluded them from the operators section. So this much thing will get from the first section. Okay, so you can expect this much of information from the first section. Then we'll move to the second section. Okay, in which we'll talk about decision control statements. So what are decision control statements? There are statements like else if and else statements. Okay, yeah, so we'll talk about these statements in C++ and how they help in controlling the decisions. Okay, whether we want something or whether we don't want something. Okay, so we'll look at that part within this section. Okay, so we'll talk about decision control statements here. Okay, then moving on, you can after learning these statements, you can learn about the switch statement. Okay, switch statement and why it is particularly used. Okay, I'll recommend you watching documentations of Geeks for Geeks, or you can watch other documentations as well. Okay, yeah, so this was all about these two sections. In the section 3 of this course, we're going to talk about different types of loops. Okay, now, yeah, so we are going to talk about different types of loops in this section. Okay, so there are particularly three loops: for loop, okay, then we'll talk about while loop, and then finally we are going to talk about do while loop. Okay, we are going to look at the syntaxes. Syntax is particularly a skeleton of how a particular thing looks like. Okay, syntax could be of anything, like it could be of decision control statements or loops or some other thing. Okay, so we'll talk about these loops in the section 3. Along with these loops, we are also going to talk about break and continue statements. Okay, which are very commonly used while we use the loop. Okay, so break statement is used for the purpose of exiting the loop. Okay, a loop is used for doing a particular thing again and again. Let's suppose you want to print a statement 10 times, so you will run a loop, and within the loop you will write the statement, and yeah, so there will be a condition which helps to run the loop 10 times. Okay, so this is what we'll do by the help of the loop. Okay, and break statement and continue statement are a part of, they're used with the loop only. Okay, so continue statement is used to skip a condition, whereas break statement is used to exit the loop. Okay, so we'll talk about these break and continue statements in this section. Okay, along with the loop, and then moving on, in the section 4th, we'll talk about functions. We'll talk about how functions work, how we call a function. Okay, let's suppose we defined a function, then how do we work with the function? We are going to talk about all of that in this section. And in the part 2 of the functions, we are going to talk about passing, function passing. Okay, how do we pass the parameter? We pass the parameter by two ways. Okay, one is the call by value, another one is the call by reference. Okay, call by reference. So yeah, this is an example of function passing. Okay, we pass in reference, we pass the address, whereas in value we pass the actual value of the variable or whatever parameter we are going to pass. Okay, so yeah, this was all about the section 4. In the section 5, we are going to talk about data structure. Okay, array, which is a data structure, right? Array is a linear data structure, so we are going to talk about arrays, and we are going to talk about strings and how we can work with these arrays and strings. So there are some common things in between these two data structures. So we'll talk about that in the section 5 itself. Okay, now moving on, let's move on to the next page. Okay, so in the section 6, okay, I've kept pointers here so that now you get to know about what are pointers, why they are particularly used in C++. So pointers are nothing but they are used to store memory addresses. Okay, memory addresses of a particular variable. Let's suppose a variable is stored in the, let's suppose we write a program where we have defined a particular variable. Now the variable will be stored at some memory location in our particular, device, whatever it is. So yeah, so to store the memory address of that particular variable, of where it is exactly stored, we'll use pointers. Okay, so section 6 we'll talk about pointers. Then in the section 7 we'll talk about structures. Okay, so there are what is the use of structures particularly. So one thing is that we have user defined data types. Sorry, okay, so C++ provides us predefined data types that we can use and that we can work with. Okay, predefined data types. Okay, to store or to work with values like integers. Okay, integers, strings, characters. Okay, uh, boolean, and decimal. For decimal we write float. Okay, so these many types of data can be handled using predefined data types only. But let's say we want some kind of data which cannot be stored within these data types, then we create user defined data types. So structures help us to create user defined data types. Okay, yeah, so that was all about this section. We are going to talk about structures, and then we are also going to talk about memory allocation. Okay, so we'll also talk about memory allocation. So there are two types of memory allocation particularly. Memory allocation, yeah. So there is static memory allocation. Okay, memory allocation, and uh, there is dynamic memory allocation. Okay, so we have two types of memory allocation. Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about these things within this section only, and we'll also talk about memory allocation in this one. Okay, in the last section. In the section 8th, we'll talk about standard template library. Okay, so C++ provides us a library in which we can work with different containers. Containers are particularly, data structures only. They help us to store some kind of data. Okay, so yeah, we are going to work with standard template library. Okay, this is, this will be an informative section for any C++ enthusiast. Okay, and finally, in the last section, in the section 9, we are going to talk about object oriented programming in C++. Okay, so we are going to talk about a number of things here. We are going to talk about classes uh, and objects. Okay, so even the class helps us to create user defined data types, as we have seen in the case of structures, right? So classes, we'll also talk about user defined data types here in the classes and objects. Okay, then we'll talk about constructors and destructors. Okay, constructors and destructors. Okay, then we'll talk about memory allocation. We'll talk about access modifiers. Okay, we'll talk about access modifiers, or access specifier we also call it. Okay, and then finally we are going to talk about four pillars of object oriented programming. Okay, four pillars of object oriented programming. Okay, so we are going to talk about a lot of things here in the last section, and it will be a very informative section. If you are someone who is a computer science student, then this section is a must. Okay, you must view this section because it is very helpful, in terms of uh, information. Like, you'll get a lot of information out of this section. Okay, so yeah, this was the rough outline of the course. So this is how the course will look like. Okay, so yeah, moving on, will yeah, this will be the total, this is what you can expect from this course. Okay, so yeah, this was all about this video. Hope to see you in the next videos. Okay.